Welcome to BY.JUST.SUMMARY.
The story opens with Theo, an elderly Portuguese man, arriving in the small southern town of Golden, Georgia, right around Easter. He's escaping a harsh New York winter and immediately falls in love with the town's spring beauty, the blooming dogwoods and azaleas, the slow pace, and especially the Oxbow River. On his very first full day, he takes a long, leisurely walk through town at dawn, soaking in every little detail of the architecture and history. He has no schedule, no obligations, and he loves the feeling of being completely anonymous. He wanders into a cozy coffee shop called the Chalice, where he sees something that stops him cold: 92 beautiful pencil portraits of local people hanging on the walls. They're drawn by a local artist named Asher Glisten. Theo becomes obsessed with them. He decides on the spot that he's going to buy every single one and personally return them to the people in the drawings, their rightful owners. He starts with the portrait of a woman named Minette Prentice. He writes her a polite, old-fashioned letter inviting her to meet him at the town fountain so he can give it to her. Minette, who's an accountant stuck in a job she hates, gets the letter and is both touched and nervous. Her husband, a prosecutor, is super suspicious at first, but they agree to go. At the fountain, Theo meets Minette. He's gentle, sincere, and completely disarming. He tells her he chose her portrait because her face reminded him of someone he once loved. They sit and talk, and Minette opens up about her struggles. By the end, she's in tears, and Theo gifts her the drawing, calling her St. Minette. This first meeting becomes the model for everything that follows. After that, Theo starts making friends around town. He walks into the Verbivore, a used bookstore, and hits it off with the grumpy but funny owner, Tony Wilcox. Tony tells him about a nice apartment for rent above an office building called Ponder House. Theo meets the building's owner, James Ponder, a respected local consultant. After a long, honest conversation, Ponder agrees to rent him the beautiful third-floor apartment that overlooks the river. Theo deposits a huge sum of money, $100,000, into a trust with Ponder to fund his portrait project and other quiet acts of kindness. Ponder's secretary, Anita Gidley, starts helping track down addresses for the people in the portraits. As spring moves forward, Theo gives away several more portraits. He meets Kendrick Whitaker, a night custodian at the university, whose young daughter Lamisha is in the hospital after a terrible car accident that killed her mother. Theo not only gives Kendrick the portrait but secretly arranges better medical care for Lamisha and support for the family. He also starts crossing paths with other memorable characters: Simone, a talented graduate cello student, Basil, a street musician, and a mysterious, troubled homeless woman named Ellen, who rides around town on a bicycle. By the end of this first section, Theo has settled into his apartment, created a daily rhythm of walks, coffee, and book buying, and turned his unusual mission into a real purpose. The town is starting to notice this kind, mysterious old man who asks a lot of questions and gives more than he takes. After settling into his apartment above Ponder House, Theo continues his portrait project with quiet determination. He has now bought nearly 20 portraits from the Chalice and begins returning them more regularly. Each meeting follows a similar but never mechanical pattern. He writes a short, respectful letter, meets the person at a place they choose, hands them their portrait, and then simply listens. One of the most important meetings in this section is with Ellen. Theo has seen her several times riding her old bicycle through town, always alone and keeping to herself. One afternoon, he finds her sitting on a bench near the Oxbow River. Instead of giving her a letter, he approaches her gently and sits down. Ellen is defensive at first and doesn't trust easily, but Theo doesn't push. He simply sits with her in silence for a while, then begins speaking softly about the beauty of the river. Slowly, Ellen begins to talk. She reveals very little about her past, but it's clear she's carrying heavy pain and loss. When Theo finally gives her the portrait Asher drew of her years ago, she stares at it for a long time without speaking. This meeting marks the beginning of a very special, slow-growing friendship between them. Meanwhile, Theo's friendship with Asher Glisten grows much deeper. They begin meeting almost every afternoon at the Chalice. Asher, who is in his late 20s, is talented but insecure about his art. Theo becomes a father-like figure to him, offering encouragement and wisdom. They talk for hours about art, beauty, suffering, and what it means to really see people. Theo tells Asher that his portraits are not just drawings. They are acts of attention and love. Theo also meets Simone Moreau, a gifted cello performance major at the university. He first sees her playing in a small recital and is deeply moved. After the performance, he waits for her and gives her back her portrait. Simone is surprised and emotional. She's been struggling with intense performance anxiety and pressure from her family to succeed. Theo listens to her story with complete attention and tells her something that stays with her, that music should come from joy, not fear. Their meeting becomes a turning point for Simone. Another significant connection is with Basil, a rough-looking street musician who plays guitar downtown. Basil has a criminal record and trusts almost no one. When Theo approaches him with his portrait, Basil is suspicious and almost hostile at first, but Theo's calm sincerity eventually breaks through. Over time, Theo not only gives him the portrait, but also buys him a high-quality guitar and helps him find temporary housing. Basil slowly begins to open up about his difficult childhood and past mistakes. Throughout these months, Theo develops a steady daily rhythm that the reader comes to love. He wakes early and walks along the river, stops at the Chalice for coffee, visits Tony at the Verbivore bookstore almost every morning, and spends his afternoons either meeting portrait owners or talking with Asher. In the evenings, he often sits on his balcony overlooking the river, reading or writing letters. He also begins hosting small, simple gatherings in his apartment. Tony, James Ponder, Anita, and sometimes Asher come over. Theo cooks traditional Portuguese dishes for them: salt cod, rice, and simple desserts. These evenings are warm and full of laughter and good conversation for the first time in many years. Theo feels like he belongs somewhere. By the end of part 2, Theo has returned roughly 30 portraits. The people of Golden are beginning to talk about him. Some call him the Portrait Man. Others are simply curious about who this generous old man really is and why he's doing all of this. The section ends on a peaceful but slightly mysterious note, as Theo stands on his balcony one night, looking out at the river, clearly carrying thoughts and memories he has not yet shared with anyone. As summer turns to fall, Theo's quiet work continues. He's now returned over 40 portraits, and the people of Golden are beginning to feel the ripple effects of his kindness. His friendship with Ellen becomes one of the most tender parts of the story. Ellen starts showing up at Theo's apartment regularly. They take long walks together, and she teaches him how to spot different birds. She collects feathers and small treasures from her bike rides and gives them to Theo as gifts. In return, Theo encourages her to start a small business repairing bicycles and selling found objects. Ellen slowly begins to trust him with pieces of her painful past. Though she still holds back many secrets, their bond feels pure and healing. Theo also spends more time with Kendrick Whitaker and his daughter Lamisha, who is still recovering in the hospital. Theo visits them often, reading stories to Lamisha and eventually creating a special handmade book for her called The Princess of Titalamish. The time he spends with them helps Kendrick let go of his anger. In a powerful moment, Kendrick chooses to show mercy to the driver who caused the accident that killed his wife and injured his daughter. With Simone, Theo becomes a steady source of support. He attends her cello rehearsals and performances, sitting quietly in the back. Their conversations about music are deep and meaningful. Simone shares stories about her cello's history, and Theo tells her about concerts he's attended in Europe. Their relationship feels almost like that of a father and daughter. Theo continues meeting more people from the portraits: a young design student struggling with self-doubt, a boy in a wheelchair who dreams of becoming an athlete, a one-armed bartender who feels invisible, and several others carrying different kinds of pain and loneliness. Each meeting is unique, but the heart of them is always the same. Theo listens with complete attention, asks gentle questions, and makes each person feel truly seen. His friendship with Asher Glisson grows even richer during this time. They spend long afternoons talking about art, beauty, suffering, and purpose. Theo tells Asher that the portraits are more than drawings. They are acts of love and attention. He even admits that his project is a little selfish because it brings him so much joy. Tony, the bookseller, finally opens up to Theo about his painful memories from serving in Vietnam. James Ponder and his assistant Anita become true friends, not just business connections. The small group starts to feel like a chosen family. Theo begins hosting more gatherings in his apartment, cooking Portuguese meals and sharing stories that make everyone laugh and sometimes cry. As fall turns into winter, the town feels different because of Theo's presence. People are kinder to each other. Small acts of generosity start appearing around Golden. The community is slowly waking up to the power of simple attention and kindness. By the end of part 3, Theo has given away around 43 portraits. In his journal, he writes that these ordinary people are capable of real saintliness, and he feels honored to be the one helping their goodness come out. As winter ends and spring arrives again, Theo is now returning the final portraits. The town of Golden has completely embraced him. People greet him warmly on the streets, and many lives have been quietly transformed by his kindness and attention over the past year. However, everything changes when Theo suddenly becomes very ill. He starts feeling weak and tired, and eventually collapses in his apartment. His close friends Tony, Asher, Ellen, James Ponder, Simone, and Anita all rush to his side. They take turns staying with him, bringing food, and caring for him. This crisis pulls all of them even closer together as they realize how deeply they love this old man who came into their lives just 1 year ago. While he is sick in bed, Theo finally begins to open up about his own past. He reveals the painful truth he had kept hidden the entire time. Many years ago, he lost his beloved wife and young daughter in a terrible car accident. The pain was so deep that he had wandered through life for years feeling lost and empty. Coming to Golden and returning the portraits was his way of healing. By helping others feel seen and loved, he was slowly learning to live again. In his final weeks, Theo becomes determined to finish what he started. Even while weak, he makes sure every last portrait is returned to its rightful owner. He spends special, meaningful time with each of his friends. He gives Tony advice about the bookstore, encourages Asher to keep drawing from the heart, tells Simone to play music with joy, and shares quiet moments with Ellen on the balcony watching the river. The most emotional scenes come in Theo's last days. His friends gather around his bed. There are tears, laughter, and many heartfelt goodbyes. Theo passes away peacefully in his apartment, looking out at the Oxbow River he had grown to love so much. The final chapters and epilogue show the lasting impact of Theo's time in Golden. Ellen finds a stable home and purpose, no longer living on the streets. Asher gains confidence in his art and continues Theo's spirit through his drawings. Simone overcomes her fears and performs with new freedom. Tony becomes gentler and more open with customers. Even James Ponder starts doing small acts of kindness in his own way. The very last pages are quiet and moving. The town of Golden is forever changed. People continue the tradition Theo started, noticing others, listening deeply, and offering small acts of kindness. The book ends on a bittersweet but hopeful note, showing how one mysterious old man's year of love and attention left a permanent mark on an entire community.